And let me ask you about a topic I'm sure you track very closely, which is subgroups of voters, meaning particularly older voters, women, and other kind of clusters of voters. In 2018, Democrats picked up fairly sizable advantages all over a lot of the parts of the country, particularly in the suburbs for the women and older voters in surprising congressional districts. And it really drove the success that Democrats had in congressional races. Do you see that advantage that Democrats had in 2018 midterm election carrying over to 2020 presidential election?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's absolutely no evidence that the groups that shifted more Democratic between 16 and 18 have gone back. You know, white college women, 60% are voting for Biden. Millennial women, 65% voting for Biden. And I certainly think in the midst of this crisis that he's created, that no one's going back. None of these groups are going back. The other thing that's interesting is that, as a Democrat, we almost never talk about men as target voters, but college-educated men have actually moved significantly toward the Democratic Party. And so, we're about 50-50 with college-educated men, which is a really remarkable, and they really do not like Donald Trump for all the same reasons that a lot of suburban women don't like Donald Trump. But I think it's even more complicated that for men. And so you have this massive, so you have a massive education gap that is driven by women for the most part, but college men are part of it too. The other dynamic that's happening right now, which I'm sure everyone's read about, is that older voters seem to be moving against Trump. And white seniors have been a stalwart group for Republicans. And usually is the reason why Republicans do better in midterms, since older people are more likely to turn out. And I don't, as Vin said, these are all snapshots in time. I don't know if it endures, but we're seeing some real erosion with older voters. And so, in part because a lot of them are the ones who are dying, and Trump made it pretty clear he doesn't care, right? So, if you're over 70, and have a comorbidity, this president actually doesn't care if you die. So I think that is a big part of why we've seen that shift. Where there's some weaknesses right now around younger and Hispanic voters around Biden. But I got to say, what I know for campaigns that I do, they are the low information, late engagers. So I'm not panicked about it. Hispanic voters always are weaker in the beginning, are always later to decide and later to participate. Every poll I ever do, we're doing less well with Hispanics than we end up actually doing on election day. So those are things of current concern for sure, but I'm not particularly concerned that we aren't going to do very well with Hispanic and Latino voters. I think strength for Trump remains white, non-college men. There are more people without a college education than with a college education in this country. And the one final thing I would say is that because of the Electoral College, it is still possible for Trump to win, obviously, even with all of these shifts, because some of the states that are in play as battleground states don't have big suburban college educated, and I'm not talking about red states, I'm talking about Wisconsin, right? So, there are states that are in play that don't have big segments that have moved towards Trump.